Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I hope that everyone is having a great week. I know a lot of people sent their kids back to school this week, and that is why we're going to be going live here with Dr. Steve Silvestro. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's so great to see you. It's been a long time.
I know it has been a long time. I think the last time I talked to you was like before I had my children, which was quite a while ago.
Yes, indeed.
So Dr. Steve Silvestro is here to talk with us a little bit about going back to school and making sure we're all happy and healthy, or as happy and healthy as we can be this school year. Steve, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a pediatrician. I trained at Georgetown in DC for everything, college medical school residency, and never really left the area. Practiced as a primary care pediatrician for 11 years. Along the way, the combination of taking care of other families' kids and having my own began to really recognize that there's a lot of worry and anxiety in raising kids these days. So try to pull back the veil of pediatrics and share a lot of what we all get trained to know, and started a podcast, website, social media presence called the Child Repair Guide, to really try and distill a lot of the medical information that parents might be worried about, and try and make this whole parenting thing a little bit easier. So.
And if you guys have not checked out Child Repair Guide, I definitely recommend checking that podcast out and the website. So if you're more of a reader, go to the website. If you're more of a listener like me, the podcast is really great for parents. Super short episodes that are super actionable. I really loved your sleep episode most recently.
Yeah.
And that is a great one if people are worried about sleep as we're headed back to school. Great actionable tips in there. And so you are a dad, and you, I'm assuming, are sending your kids to school soon for the fall. And so what would you say are your priorities for your kids and family as school starts? And what do you think we should all be focused on as parents?
Yeah. Yes. So I have a 13-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son. They're headed into 6th and 8th grade this year. And we have the situation where we're kind of straddling the vaccine. My daughter's 13. She's had her 2 doses. My son is 11, and he's going back without. So that is weighing on our minds. But what we are hoping to really try and practice, especially these first few months, and what I would suggest for any family listening or watching practice as well, is 3 things: patience, empathy, and openness to reflection. So what I mean first by patience, we are, in any normal school year, usually going in expecting, at least I suggest that parents expect, that the first day, the first week, the first couple of weeks are a period of time where there are going to be a lot of really big emotions, big ups, big downs. It can seem like your kids, no matter what age they are, really have things put together. They might go off to school fine in the morning and then come home and had a great day. And then once you're actually home, that's when they are comfortable and can let loose and the emotions come out. It's a period of time where they're still getting used to the new school year. And no matter how happy and confident and comfortable kids are at school, they're still a little bit on edge, right? You've got to keep it together in school. So once you're home, you don't have to do that. And that's when we as parents tend to get the brunt of the emotions. So even just in a normal school year, no pandemic, nothing else, I would usually suggest that these first couple of weeks, you really go in patiently, expecting that there are going to be big ups and downs. Try not to necessarily have any big, crazy celebrations. I know we get very excited about school year usually, and may want to go out for ice cream or something really big after the first day or the first week. But kids might instead just need some time to decompress and have their own space. The second piece, empathy. this is a new experience for all of us. We thought last year was a new experience, and it's still new as we go along. This year it's a blend of what we experienced last year, and also a little closer to something that's more normal, in the sense that many areas really planned on starting up like normal this year. So a lot of schools are going to have full capacity. A lot of the activities that our kids are taking part in the fall and the winter are hoping to get back up and running at full capacity, normal schedules, full teams, that sort of thing. But our kids haven't necessarily experienced that all that much for the last year and a half. For many kids, whether they were in a hybrid model, a full-time model, or a full-time home model, many kids have not gone back to school with a full classroom of kids in a year and a half. Some children haven't interacted with all that many people. Some kids have taken on the anxieties of COVID and might be nervous around about being around so many people. So there are going to be a lot of new feelings and experiences for our kids, especially these first few weeks as they start getting used to the school year. A lot of kids may have gotten used to being around their family, no matter how old they are. They might be 10 or 11 or 12, and you'd think, okay, we'll just go back to normal and you're fine because you've done this before. But they've spent the last year around their family. If you've been working from home and they've been home, interactions with other kids might be fairly awkward. Again, my kids are 11 and 13, and so it's a period of time where there's often a little bit of drama amongst friends and other kids in school. But what was really nice over the course of the pandemic was that by really being able to focus in on who you hang out with, there was a lot less drama. And that wasn't necessarily just the case for my kids and their friends. This is something that we really recognized across the board. Bullying really went down. A lot of us early on were afraid that there would be a lot of cyberbullying, but that didn't pan out. So a lot of the hard interactions that kids might typically experience in school have been gone for the last year and a half. And now that they're all coming back, that might be there. So that second piece, the empathetic piece, is really important because it's going to be key for parents to know that their kids are going to be going through a lot of emotions and a lot of new experiences, whether they are things that they have experienced in the past and just haven't for a long time, or they're brand new altogether. So going in, understanding that, and bracing yourself for that is going to be key to having as smooth of a transition back to the school year as possible. And finally, the third piece of an openness for reflection sounds kind of wishy-washy, but I think it's really important. This last year and a half has been the most unusual year and a half in all of our lives. I think that for many of us, our habits, our families, behavior and patterns and things that we are used to doing, all those things changed, very drastically early on when everything shut down and nobody was doing anything. And we started to kind of creep back into normal activities. We had a wonderful window at the start of the summer. My kids did their summer swim team. It felt like life was normal. But for a lot of families, once the fall kicks in and school starts up, fall sports and activities start up, then life gets super busy. And I think that even with the pandemic hanging over us and that cloud hanging on us, I think there's still going to be a big temptation to dive back into normal life as close as we can get. And for some kids, some parents, some families as a unit, that might not sit so well once you're actually in it. Many of us have gotten used to things being a little more laid back. And so my recommendation is that once all this starts up, if you start getting the feeling that it doesn't feel right, if it's starting to feel super stressful, if you're seeing that your kids are not doing as well as you'd hoped, or you just don't like it because you really liked what life was like before, that is okay. I think that it's really important for us to not feel obliged to dive right back into how things were. And that if there is something from pandemic life that you'd like to hang on to, that's all right. And you can make it a point to hang on to that. So it's always helpful to take a moment to pause, take a breath, evaluate how things are and how you want them to be.
I love that. And I feel like COVID has been a really great opportunity for a lot of families to redefine their boundaries when it comes to activities and life in general. And like you said, there's going to be a lot of big emotions and a lot of adjustments here, and maybe less activities, if your family wants to do it, might be the best opportunity to leave some space for the rest and the big emotions and all of that that's going to come. So when we're thinking about this school year, originally, when I was thinking about the editorial calendar and what we were going to be talking about today, I thought, well, yes, we're going back to normal. And, we're going to just talk about giving ourselves grace and all of the normal things. But now Delta variant's on the scene. And I know a lot of people are concerned about that for many different reasons. And so I wanted to kind of just ask for your perspective on all of this as school starts, and what kinds of things should we as parents be looking at as far as stats and numbers in our areas to kind of inform our decisions about things like extracurriculars and things of that nature.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to start by explaining why the Delta variant is such a big deal. We hear a lot, it's more contagious, it spreads more easily. I've always found that understanding why helps a ton, right? So the real superpower that the Delta variant has, and part of why kids are at a bit more of a risk right now, is that it multiplies, it replicates a lot faster than the original strain that we all faced early on. So if you think about, we were just at the county fair a week ago, right? And that county fair game where you shoot the water pistol into the hole and it blows up the balloon, right?
Yeah.
So I got suckered into paying the extra $5 so that I would play too. The guy at the counter, I had my two kids and their cousin, and the guy said, well, if you play too, I'll close it off and like one of the four of you will be guaranteed to win, and that way somebody else won't get the prize. All right, fine, I'll do it. Well, of course, wizened old adult gets in there and didn't even think about the fact that I should have let a kid win, but just shot right into the hole, balloon filled up, and I won before the kids were even half full. And that's what the Delta variant actually is. So it fills up the balloon, it multiplies so quickly compared to the other variants that now you have tons of virus, your cells burst just like that balloon, more virus goes into other cells, and you end up building up a lot more virus inside your airway at a much faster rate than you did with the previous versions. Okay, so that then means that it's really easy to spread because you have a lot more virus to spread around. Just like that balloon filling up faster, you build up a lot more virus faster than you would have with the other ones. So it also then means that you're contagious at an earlier stage. And so, these are reasons why it's spreading a lot more easily in the community. It's also a reason why people who are vaccinated might still get it, although we think that they are contagious for a much shorter window than somebody who wasn't vaccinated. Essentially your body after the vaccine is stepping in front of that water pistol and blocking it from filling the balloon too much. But the problem with the Delta variant is it's filling up so many balloons so fast that your body has to catch up. And so you get a little window when you're vaccinated where you're still contagious. So that is why this is such a big deal. Luckily, the things that will really help are still the same things that helped out throughout this whole pandemic. All those same precautions: masking, distancing, and great ventilation. Okay. The problem is that we've removed a lot of those safety precautions, right? We pulled off the masks early on, or early this summer. Distancing is kind of non-existent. Schools are going back at full capacity, and so we're not going to have half classroom size for many locations. Luckily, many schools really worked on ventilation, early in the year, so that hopefully those places that really need that work have had that work done. So we're left now going into this school year really ideally with masks, and hopefully with improved ventilation. And so I would really try to focus as a parent that even if it's not mandated by your school system, really try and convince your kids to wear masks in the classroom. You can work at a bigger level with the school or even with teachers to try and get as much outdoor time as possible. There's been a push in my community to try and get lunch outside, which I think would be a huge win, because that's the time when kids' masks are off if they're wearing masks, and they're right across from each other and talking. And so that's probably their greatest risk, actually, in my mind, would be lunchtime. So if you can get lunchtime outdoors, as much other time outdoors as you can, you've got amazing ventilation there, and really focusing on masks. I should say, I just feel like I need to say, because it's been a big talking point lately, that the masks are psychologically damaging to children, and that's really not the case. First off, school is not the only time where kids interact with other people. They get to interact with you at home, where you're not going to be wearing masks. They get to interact with people outside where there won't be masks. So even if masks would cause some sort of developmental problem, it's only for a short window in the day, but it's not the case. In terms of language development, we know that for kids over 3 and kids who are not deaf or hard of hearing, there's not an issue. Kids under 3 and kids who are deaf and hard of hearing, there's an understandable issue there to think about. But all this to say that, going into the school year, if we could really focus on masks and ventilation, outdoor time as much as possible, then I think we have a really good shot of actually having a low rate of transmission amongst kids and teachers and staff, because we know that those are the things that have worked.
Yeah, I love that you told us the why, which when we're thinking about kids and convincing our kids to wear their masks. I don't have kids that are old enough to wear masks right now. But I know I have a lot of friends, and I know a lot of people who maybe their school district isn't requiring masks, but they're requesting their child to wear a mask. And you kind of have to trust that your child is going to keep up with that during the day, and telling them that why. And I love your image of the balloon filling up, and using some of those images and reasons for kids without scaring them, which I know is hard, can be a great way to convince them, to participate in mask wearing and doing things that can obviously protect them. I wish that all schools had lunch outside. I think that'd be great.
I know.
Just from now on, let's do more outside time. Like, kids need to be outside more in general.
Absolutely. And you had asked also about stats. So yes, there are 3 to focus on. There's a really wonderful website called covidactnow.org that I have loved since last year, and they really focus on these 3. So it's a great way to find out the most important information. The 3 stats to focus on are the number of daily infections per 100,000 people in your area. Okay. The reason we use per 100,000 people is to standardize. So in the small town where I grew up, if we had 10 infections a day, That's a much bigger deal than if New York City has 10 infections a day. Okay, there's very little that means in New York City, but there's a whole lot in my small town. So we standardized to 100,000 people per day. When it comes to the number of daily infections per 100,000 per day, the ideal number is 4 or less. Okay, most places in the country aren't there right now. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do things, can't have activities. But the hope is that 4 or less. If you can have 10 or less, that's great too. But 4 or less is ideal. The second number is the test positivity rate. Okay, you want to have 5% or lower for your test positivity rate. The reason is that when the number is higher than 5%, then that we worry that we're not catching enough positive tests. We're not catching enough people with COVID, which then would mean that number per 100,000 might not be reliable. Okay, so if your test positivity rate is less than 5%, then it means your number per 100,000 is a good solid estimate of how much is out there. And then finally, what you'll see is RT or R0. That's the effective transmission rate or the infection rate. You'll see people describe it in different ways. What that is when it's 1, each infected person infects 1 other person. If it's 2, each infected person infects 2 other people. If it's 0, each infected person doesn't infect anybody else. So it's usually like 1 point something or 0.8. So you ideally want to see that it is less than 1, because that tells you that in your area, the infections are on the way out. When it's over 1, then you're likely to continue to see that your daily infection rate is getting higher over time. So yeah, daily infections, you want hopefully 4 per 100,000 or less. I would say in terms of going out and doing things, having activity, if you have good precautions like masks and ventilation, then really even 10 to 15. I mean, I personally, with my own kids, if they have masks on, they're doing activities outside and we're at 15 per 100,000, I'm okay with that. If we're up at 30, 40 per 100,000, then we're gonna probably close down a bit more in my house. And then you want the infection rate, hopefully just less than 1 to feel good that it's on the way out in your community. And then that positivity rate, you want 5% or less.
Awesome. I am going to go look at those in our area because it's important to be informed about your specific area when it comes to these things. And sometimes it's hard to know exactly what to pay attention to. And so I appreciate you telling us kind of the condensed version of the 3 things we need to look out for. And if you have a kid who is into statistics or that you think is going to be learning about statistics this year and won't get super freaked out by the numbers, this is a great opportunity to see statistics in real life.
Yeah, that's right. Because what's really neat on a nice nerdy science angle is that the infection rate, when it is over 1, what you're going to see is then a few days later, that's when your daily cases per 100,000 will start to pick up, because that's more looking ahead, and the daily infection rate is really looking back. By the time people were tested and those numbers recorded, that information is kind of a few or several days old. And so you can use those 2 to predict where you're going. So yeah, if you have a kid that's really into math and stats, it is kind of a neat thing to look at. Yeah.
So kind of shifting from COVID and what we need to be looking out for, and what we're worried about, to some other things that we might be worried about. So kids stayed home a lot last year, whether they were going in person or virtual. Like your kids probably had some periods of time where they were doing school at home. And parents may have started to notice some things. Maybe they're concerned about ADHD, ADD, other learning differences, other neurological differences. So is the physician's office somewhere we should bring this up, or should we be bringing it up to somebody else?
No, the physician's office is absolutely the place to discuss those things. Now, I will say that last year in virtual learning, being home was such a new experience that had so many challenges for almost everybody. I mean, there were some kids that really thrived with it, but it was a brand new experience on both sides, on the teacher side and on the student side. And so there is certainly the possibility that some of those things that you saw and may have been worried about may not be something that persists or that truly is an issue with how your child learns in a typical school year. That said, it's worth keeping these things in mind, and you can bring them up with your pediatrician or family doctor. Typically the standard approach is, especially for ADD or ADHD, there is a screening survey called the Vanderbilt survey that teachers and parents fill out. You can find it online too, if you're curious about the sorts of things that it looks at. And it essentially gives you an idea that, okay, ADD, ADHD is the path that we should be pursuing versus something else, because there are many other issues that might be going on. It can give you those same types of symptoms, especially last year when we were worried about mental health of many kids. Depression, anxiety can present as challenges with focus and concentration and other ADD, ADHD typical symptoms. So you do that survey, teachers digs in and teases out attention problems, different types of learning issues, reading, math, processing disabilities. And so it can really home in on what's going on. So it's a big ordeal to do it, but it's well worth it if you have the concern. But again, it may be worth having a discussion with the doctor early on, but giving a little bit of wiggle room to see how the start of the school year goes, just because it's closer to a typical school year this year than last year was for most kids.
That's great advice. And there are those evaluations, like you said, for ADHD. You can there are also ones for other learning disabilities like dyslexia. Those questionnaires that you can find online, which might give a kind of a good idea of what we're looking out for there. And I will add in, so giving time to see if this school year is different for your child, but don't wait too long.
Yes, there's that hard, like, gray area, because the sooner you can get things taken care of, the better the outcome, but also everybody else might be waiting until November too. And so it's really hard to get an appointment. And now you're not getting taken care of until December or January.
Right. And then to get those services at the school takes even longer after you get your test results, and getting things like that IEP and that 504 can take months. So, it's that gray area of, you don't want to assume something so soon, but you don't want to wait too long to where you're kind of dragging things out into the summer. I think it's having a hard time.
You're worth talking with the physician early on. Probably worth bringing up the teachers, not in the first week or so, but in not too long, just so they also can keep their eye open, and that way you can get moving faster.
And sometimes you might talk to the teacher and they may say, I don't see that at all.
That's right. And I know as a parent, then sometimes we're like, oh, well, maybe they're just missing it. This is
right.
Sometimes you feel that way. But for many kids, again, like we said at the very start of this conversation, behavior in school is often different from how things are at home. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But that is something that we actually use as physicians, that when we look at things like the Vanderbilt and other surveys, if the responses at home and school are very different from each other, that usually points us in the direction that there's more of an environmental cause for what one party is noticing. And so, then we try to focus on how we can address what's going on there, to help everybody out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving us all of this wonderful information. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where we can find you and how we can support you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me in a few places. My website is drstevesilvestro.com. You can find the Child Repair Guide podcast on any podcast app. I'm on Instagram at ZenDocSteve and Facebook at Dr. Steve Silvestro and the Child Repair Guide.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody go and follow Steve everywhere, because he has really great, actionable, reasonable advice for parents from the physician standpoint, which again has been super helpful for me as a parent, and I know it will be for you too. And we're going to link all of his stuff in the description. So if you're watching this later, you can just go into the description and find him there in all of those links. You can find some of a great freebie he has, which is mindfulness for parents. It's an online course, or no, it's not a freebie, sorry. It's an online course that you can purchase, right?
That's right. Although we can do a Hoffman tutoring coupon code.
Coupon code. Yeah, maybe
really
we'll get a coupon code going. It's not a freebie. I have freebies on the brain because we're making up a lot of them right now. But it's a course that you can purchase to help you as a parent. And so I'm going to link that below as well. And if you're watching this later and you know someone who might really need this information, please share it with them. The best way that we've been able to get the word out about Hoffman Tutoring Group and all of these amazing guests that have been coming on to help us with back to school is you sharing these videos. So go ahead and share it out on social media. We really appreciate it. And we will see you again next time.